This is Dan Seifert with mobileburn.com, and this is the Samsung Galaxy S3 for the US. Samsung Galaxy S3 is probably the most anticipated smartphone to arrive this summer, and it's about to make a big splash in the US. Nearly identical versions of the Galaxy S3 are coming to at least 5 different carriers. Quite a coup for a company that isn't named Apple. The design of the Galaxy S3 is unmistakably Samsung, though some users may find it less attractive than other smartphones on the market. The phone is being offered in marble white or pebble blue color options, and like many of Samsung's designs, both are exceptionally glossy. The glossy plastic materials used in the phone's construction can make it feel rather slippery while you are handling it. During my review period, the phone slipped out of my hands on more than one occasion while I was trying to shoot a picture using the camera. The Galaxy S3 is certainly a big phone, and that may be a turnoff for some users. However, it is smaller in all dimensions compared to the Samsung-built Google Galaxy Nexus, and its 8.6mm thick frame helps it slip into even the skinniest of pockets. Samsung managed to shrink the bezel around the display to minimize the phone's footprint while still providing a large screen, and I have to say it really does work. The Galaxy S3 doesn't feel or look nearly as large as something like the HTC Evo 4G LTE, which technically has a slightly smaller display. The Galaxy S3 is also remarkably light for its size, tipping the scales at a mere 134 grams. The display itself is a new 4.8-inch version of Samsung's HD Super AMOLED screens. It has 720 by 1280 pixels of resolution for a pixel density of 306 ppi. And like all of Samsung's Super AMOLED screens, it has very vibrant colors and tremendous viewing angles. The screen does use the much derided pentile subpixel matrix, but at these high resolutions, the ill effects from the pentile layout are really hard to notice. But the screen isn't perfect, and I noticed that it can be very difficult to see outdoors in direct sunlight, and the color accuracy isn't anywhere near that of the Super LCD 2 displays found on the HTC One X and other devices. But if you don't ever put the Galaxy S3 side by side with the One X, you'd really be hard-pressed to find faults with the display itself. Above the display are the earpiece, light sensors, and front-facing 1.9 megapixel camera. Also hidden behind the phone's bezel is a multicolor LED notification light. Below the screen are physical home keys and capacitive keys for back and menu. The capacitive keys disappear when they're not illuminated, so it can take some time to memorize their location when you first start using the phone. Though the Galaxy S3 is made entirely of plastic materials, the edge features a wraparound silver trim with a faux brushed metal look. I'm not really a huge fan of it, but it doesn't really detract from the usability of the device, and I suspect that many people will not have a problem with it. The right side is home to the power sleep unlock key, and the left side houses the volume rocker. Both buttons have good travel and feedback and can be easily found without directly looking at the device. The back of the Galaxy S3 is pretty sparse, but at the top is an 8 megapixel camera and LED flash and external loudspeaker. Though the Galaxy S3 is one of the thinnest phones on the market, Samsung did manage to make the rear cover removable to provide access to the 2100 mAh battery, micro SIM card slot, and micro SD card slot, so you can expand the storage if you need to. Samsung says that the battery should be good for at least 8 hours of talk time or over 8 days of standby, regardless of which carrier version that you buy. And in my test, I was able to get about 15 hours of life out of the battery before it kicked the bucket, so that just puts it just ahead of the pack for most smartphones today. And you can also see here that the battery also features near-field communications built into it, so the Galaxy S3 can read NFC tags and other devices. Inside the phone, the North American version of the Galaxy S3 is powered by the same 1.5 GHz dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor that we've seen in a few of HTC's recent devices. However, Samsung decided to pair it with 2 GB of RAM, making the Galaxy S3 the first smartphone with 2 GB of RAM to be available in the US. This combination provides a speedy and stable experience when using the phone, and I could really find no instance where the Galaxy S3 felt like it was slowing down or was overwhelmed. The Galaxy S3 doesn't quite hit the same benchmark numbers as, say, like the Evo 4G LTE, but it's still incredibly fast, and nobody should really have any problem with its performance, whether you're playing 3D games, web browsing, or performing basic day-to-day tasks. One thing that I did notice, though, when you are pushing the phone hard, it does get rather warm down at the bottom where you're holding it in your hand, especially when you're doing things like intensive 3D gaming. The Galaxy S3 runs Android 4.0.4 Ice Cream Sandwich, but Android purists will have a hard time seeing that when they first use the phone, because Samsung has customized it extensively with its TouchWiz user interface. The new TouchWiz interface builds upon the TouchWiz 4 that debuted on last year's Galaxy S2, and Samsung says the interface here was inspired by elements found in nature. This nature influence can be seen in the various water droplet sound effects and animations that you find throughout the OS. The overall experience really isn't terribly different from older versions of TouchWiz though, so if you didn't like TouchWiz before, you probably won't like it now. One thing that I can say about the interface is that it's blindingly quick, and it never gets in the way of what you're trying to accomplish. Unlike other Android skins and interfaces that feature unnecessary animations all over the place, the Galaxy S3's animations are toned down and informative and never seem to slow the phone down. There are certainly some things here that I like with what Samsung did with Android 4.0. The decision to keep the capacitive menu key was smart, since so many apps still require the use of it. It's certainly a more elegant solution than the on-screen menu key that appears when necessary in HTC's Sense 4.0 interface. The multitasking menu is accessible by long pressing the home key, just like in earlier versions of Android. And while this is a logical implementation, it's not as quick to access as the multitasking menu in stock Android 4.0 that has a direct key for that. The app drawer is also very useful, and it's possible to access both apps and widgets. You can rearrange your apps alphabetically or in a custom grid, and you can uninstall apps right from the app drawer itself. And you also have the ability to hide apps from view that you don't want to be, or that aren't able to be uninstalled, but aren't something that you want to have visible. The Galaxy S3 also includes a bunch of gesture-based features. So you have the ability to pause media with the palm of your hand, flip the phone over to mute incoming calls, tap the top of the phone to go to a top of the list, or swipe across the screen to capture screenshots. The phone's Smart Stay feature monitors your eyes to keep the display on while you're reading, and the pop-up video player lets you break out a video into a smaller window and perform other tasks while the video continues to play, which is pretty cool and impressive at the same time. Samsung has gone pretty light on the pre-installed apps on the Galaxy S3, and each carrier's version only has a handful of preloaded carrier apps as well. The included email app has been updated for Android 4.0, and it's really one of the best email apps available for the platform. Likewise, the calendar app offers comprehensive views for year, month, week, day, agenda, and tasks, and it looks pretty good while doing it too. Samsung is putting a huge emphasis on the sharing capabilities built into the Galaxy S3, and some of them are pretty neat. The company has expanded the standard Android Beam file transfer feature that comes with Android 4.0 with its S Beam implementation, and that lets you send larger files from one Galaxy S3 to another Galaxy S3 in a matter of just moments. The camera software has also been beefed up to feature ability to share images to other Galaxy S3 devices that are on the same Wi-Fi network. One of the big Samsung features here in the Galaxy S3 that's new to the phone is the S-Voice personal assistant. It's virtually a clone of the Siri personal assistant that debuted on Apple's iPhone 4S, and it lets you control your phone with your voice and perform various tasks. Unfortunately, in my tests, it's not very good at recognizing what you're trying to say, especially if you're in a noisy environment. And it isn't as feature complete as Siri, which itself has a long way to go on its own right. But it can still do some pretty cool things that you can't do with Siri, so you can turn on and off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth with S-Voice, and you can even launch third-party apps if you wanted to. The Galaxy S3 comes with a very capable web browser that offers speedy page load times and smooth scrolling and zooming. The phone scores very well on the SunSpider benchmark, and it provides one of the best browsing experiences we have seen on a mobile device to date. The browser features Adobe Flash Player support and multiple tabs, and it also has built-in RSS feed support and an integrated reader feature that strips out images and ads and makes it easier to read web content. Since the Galaxy S3 also runs Android 4.0, you can also choose to use the excellent Chrome beta for Android browser if you want. Last year's Galaxy S2 set the bar for Android cameras, and this year the Galaxy S3 takes it even further. Though it still shoots the same 8 megapixel resolution and 1080p video as before, Samsung has really beefed up the camera's features with high-speed capture, easy sharing modes, and the ability to snap stills while you're recording video. Images that are captured are sharp and detailed, and color accuracy is really on point. Focus is as quick as they come for today's smartphones, and though the camera doesn't have the best dynamic range, it does have a built-in HDR mode to help compensate for that. The video capture with the Galaxy S3 is pretty solid too, and there's lots of detail and clear audio. It can continuously autofocus while recording, but it does have a tendency to jump around a lot, and it doesn't like to stay focused on a single spot for very long, which can be kind of jarring. The Galaxy S3 supports 4G services on all of the carriers that it will be offered with, but it depends on which carrier you choose what exactly that means. T-Mobile's version, for instance, supports HSPA plus 42 data service, but the models offered by AT&T, Verizon Wireless, Sprint, and US Cellular all feature 4G LTE support. Either way, you can be sure that whichever carrier you do go with, the Galaxy S3 will support the fastest network speeds that carrier has to offer. And with the exception of AT&T, most of the carriers are offering both 16GB and 32GB versions of the phone for $199.99 or $249.99 with a new 2-year contract. AT&T customers will only be able to purchase the 16GB model, but that's just the way it is. Sprint and T-Mobile are selling their versions on June 21st, and the other carriers are going to be offering the phone shortly after that. The Galaxy S3 definitely has a lot of hype to live up to, but I think it does an admirable job of doing so. The phone offers an exceptionally fast user experience, a great camera, helpful software tweaks, and solid build quality. While there is much stiffer competition in the smartphone market this year compared to it was last year, Samsung did a really excellent job in keeping one step ahead of its competition and offering another blockbuster device. For more on the Galaxy S3, be sure to check out our full written review. And this is Dan Seifert for mobileburn.com. Thanks for watching.